Hey everybody, welcome to Almost in Agreement. We're continuing our campaign coverage of this colossal 22 election we've got going on here. That's probably the biggest word I'll pull off today, so I'm going to stick with it. So colossal election. I've got Dave Cazalet, or Caz as he goes by, who is running for trustee. As my joke mentions, I don't exactly know what a trustee does, and I hope he does, so he can help explain that part. And we'll talk about why he wants to run and that kind of stuff like we always do. We're Almost in Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com, and you can check out my election guide for this, what was the word? I already forgot. Excessively large 22 election. It's got links to KGIS. It's got links to Knox County Election Commission. You can check your registration status, see what your voting location is, make sure you know what district you are in, so you know which episodes you need to listen to, because those are your friends and neighbors, and those are the people actually running for the seats that you can't vote for. So check all that out there. Go to your favorite podcast provider, give us a like and a follow and a share and all those kind of things, and we will continue doing what we do and continue doing some more interviews as we get closer to this August county general and state primary, as well as federal primary, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's election season. We got a lot of work to do, so we're going to keep working on it. And yeah, that's that. Hello, Dave. Do you prefer Dave or Caz, or does it matter?
Let's use Caz.
All right, I will stick with Caz. It's on the flyer, so it makes it a little easier for people to keep it all together.
Thank you, Seth.
All right, so I always like to start these off as like, let's give a 5-minute biography of Caz.
Okay, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I left there when I was about 10 years old because my mother had asthma. My father sold his motion picture editing business in New York City and moved us to El Paso, where he filmed the early missile launches for the government. We moved to Fort Worth, where he worked for Convair at the time, which was making fighter jets and bombers. Then we moved to Dallas for a short time, and then to Houston. I graduated from high school in Houston, went to a Catholic seminary for a year, found out that wasn't for me, and went into the Marine Corps for 4 years. So kind of like the frying pan into the fire.
That's a pretty hard shift from seminary to Marine Corps, yeah. I think. Yeah.
So while I was in the Marine Corps, I met my wife on a blind date in Atlanta when I was stationed at NAS Marietta, Naval Air Station Marietta. Shortly after that, as the Marine Corps was wont to do, they transferred me to Boston, Massachusetts, actually South Weymouth, which was NAS South Weymouth. I worked on helicopters and attack jets as an aviation electrician. When I got out, we came back to Tennessee, to Cookeville, so I could go to Tennessee Tech University. 3 of my 4 children were born there. I earned my Bachelor of Arts degree in history, started working on my master's degree. My wife earned her master's degree in early childhood education while we were there. I also started working at the newspaper to help pay for college, and since I was having the children. So I started out as kind of a glorified paper boy. In those days, we had people who rode bikes to deliver papers.
I did it when I was a kid.
Yeah, so I was kind of in charge of all the carriers. Right?
Oh, see, that's a good thing I didn't work for you. My mom, that's one of the few times I've heard my mom cuss in my entire life. One of the few times my mom's ever cussed was at at my manager when I had a paper out when I was a kid. Anyway, I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, so I worked my way up. I became an advertising representative, and then an advertising manager for the Cookeville Herald-Citizen. And just about the time I was ready to finish my master's, to do my thesis, I got offered the opportunity to become editor and publisher by the company that owned the Herald-Citizen. So we moved to Hiawatha, Kansas, which is in northeast Kansas, right close to the Nebraska line.
Okay.
There, I ran into a cult called the Posse Comitatus. And for a year, we tried to bring it to the people's attention that there was something going on that wasn't quite right. Mm-hmm. People did not believe us, and no other media covered it until the bodies started showing up.
Right.
A couple of the guys were arrested. The guys in the cult were arrested. They told officers that a little 5-year-old boy named Luke Stice had been determined to be the devil by the cult leader, a guy named Mike Ryan, and he tied him to a fence post in a Nebraska winter, and the poor guy, little guy, froze to death. And then there was another guy, his last name was T-H-I-M-M, Tim. I don't remember what his first name was, but he was skinned and tortured to death. So the Nebraska State Patrol went up to this guy's door. He had automatic weapons behind the door. He had a trailer truck load of anhydrous ammonia, trailer truck load of charcoal. So he's getting ready to make some bombs. They asked him just to come in to Richardson County, Nebraska, the county seat, and he went in there. And once he got there, they charged him with 1 count of possession of a deadly weapon. Well, after the investigation, after finding the bodies, they charged him with murder. He was convicted and sentenced to death. And I kept track of him over the years, and he spent 35 years on death row and finally died of cancer.
When was that?
Oh, that was several years ago, maybe around 2002 or so. Since Nancy and I and my family were at the top of his hit list,
right.
According to a writer named Rod Colvin, who wrote a book about it called Evil Harvest, that we were in danger.
And if I was any good at like actual like high tech, or not high tech, but like, you know, some of the real criminal podcasts that are out there, I think we got a whole series we could probably put together with this one.
It was a very interesting situation. So I was there for 5 years, and just about the time all that wrapped up, I got an offer to come back to Tennessee to run the Sweetwater Monroe County Advocate, and we were all ready to do that at that point.
Right, I can see why. Yeah.
When we left, going toward St. Joseph, Missouri, there was this wonderful rainbow that we were driving right through. It was like God was saying, okay, you took care of it, now you can go back home. So I was there for 5 years. I really liked Sweetwater. The owner of that newspaper promised to sell me a part of it, which is the key to making any money in the newspaper business. But after about 5 years, he did not do it and was not going to do it. So a friend of mine named Joe Albright, who was in Cookville, the guy I worked for originally, offered me the editor and publisher job at the Russell County Times-Journal in Russell County, Kentucky. And I took it for 15% of the newspaper. There, the county government was rather corrupt. They would hold county commission meetings, and they would write out the minutes, but they would never sign them. So later they could go back and change it if they wanted to.
Right.
This county judge, the top officer in the county, is what they called him, kind of like a county executive. He lost his reelection primary by 1 vote, and that was the first year that my son Gregory voted, and my son Gregory voted against him.
So we're counting it as that being the one. I get it. Okay, check.
And so he sued me for libel because he was mad about losing. Sued me for $3 million. A friend of mine who ran a restaurant not far from the courthouse in Jamestown, Kentucky, came to me all upset. She had seen the judge executive. She had waited on the judge executive, his lawyer, who was the city attorney, and the district judge talking about what they were going to do to me.
Right.
And so it was all home cooking. The foreman of the jury was being sued by the city attorney privately for something. And I found out later that they offered to drop that suit if he would come back with a guilty verdict. So they came out $1 million against me and the newspaper. Funny thing was the insurance company first hired a $50 an hour attorney, and we lost. As soon as that was As soon as we lost, they hired a $500 an hour attorney.
Sounds about right.
We had to put up a $1.3 million bond. My bank accounts, my home had a lien against them. So we appealed it to the Court of Appeals in Kentucky. And a 3-judge panel said, if this was the law, Bill Clinton would own Rush Limbaugh. And so they reversed the verdict.
That gives us a timestamp if anybody was trying to figure out where in time.
I mean, it was an editorial. It was an opinion.
Right.
And there wasn't anything about it that injured him except pointing out that he was trying to increase taxes. So they thought they were rich. So they appealed to the Kentucky Supreme Court. They lost again. They went on to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they lost again. But all of that took 7 years.
Right. And tens of thousands of dollars in fees.
Yes. And so I was burned out. It was making me sick, so I had to get out of the newspaper business at that point.
So you jumped into politics?
No, I went to Somerset Community College as a business. A friend of mine that I knew from Sweetwater was the president of Somerset Community College. He offered me a job as business and community development director, which was setting up training. Could be simple math, could be reading for industry employees. It could be a special type of welding that they would do.
Right.
And so I did that for a while, and then the president asked me to be the PR director. And that was probably the best job I ever had because I could only write good things about people.
Right.
You know, the things that...
I mean, you could write bad things, but it's not really a good PR
Yeah, that's
move.
not the PR guys. Yeah. So then another president came in, and they asked me to write grants, and that's how I got started writing grants. In 2012, my wife retired as a school teacher in Somerset, and we moved back to Knoxville at that point. And Pellissippi State hired me as a grant director, grant development director or something. During that 5 years that I was there, I got about $30 million worth of grants, about $5 million a year, which was very, very good. In 2017, I got crossways with a new boss. I had written a story about a donor to the college who had gotten a statewide award. I had written it a week ahead of when the actual event occurred.
Right.
And it wasn't approved by the PR department by the time it actually happened. So I sent it out without permission to the Knoxville News Sentinel and the Maryville newspaper. And so my boss fired me. But I just couldn't let myself turn a news story into a history story. So,
whatever it was, you felt the need to get it out. Okay.
I did. And it was
that
all
puts
good.
us at 2017, 2018.
Right. So I've been retired since 2017.
Okay. All right. So then let's go into why the trustee seat and why now?
I've been very unhappy with the way the Tennessee legislature has been going. They seem to be taking away people's freedom. They're going to a very, very even extremist right-wing attitude toward the law. And that makes me mad. And I think we have the same thing in county government with Mayor Glenn Jacobs donating to Oath Keepers, which are the guys that attacked the Capitol on January the 6th. So this is the first time I've had a chance to run for office because as a newspaper man, I felt like it would be unethical to be in office and also report on it.
Okay, but so I hear the why now, but the why trustee? Why not a commission seat or why not run against Glenn for mayor?
Well, there's already a good candidate for mayor, so that was already decided.
I'm working on Debbie. I haven't got her scheduled yet, but I've been back and forth trying to get her scheduled.
Yeah, she's a good lady.
I'm excited to meet her. It'll be the highest local office I've had on the show so far. But anyway, but again, why the trustee's office specifically?
So I don't have to go to Nashville on this office, and other people had already taken the local jobs except for the trustee's office, and I felt like I was qualified from my experience as a administrator and an executive at the newspapers. I had about 30 or 40 employees at each of those newspapers,
Right.
which is exactly what the trustee's office has. And as you can tell from my stories, I am very hard to compromise. I don't compromise with people who are doing wrong.
Okay, so here's one of my issues. So, and this is not a particular to you issue at all. We've had a few spats on Facebook, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know what a trustee does. Like,
Okay.
I've pulled it up. Like, I started working on this, and I'm still working on trying to fill in all the gaps. But like, as far as what the research I've gotten to do so far, where do I have it in here?
I can tell you if you want to.
Yeah, I do. But because like I understand, like it's essentially it's the chief tax collector. He's in charge of getting of whatever the assessor's office is plus tax rate, getting all that math figured out,
Right.
sending out all the letters, making sure we can collect all those taxes. There's something along the lines of if there's surplus funds, what are we doing with surplus funds? Whether it's an investment over here,
That's one of
or
my
whether-
big issues.
in what we're doing with those surplus funds. But other than that, because again, like one of the issues to me that I think is unclear to voters at large, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm still not great at it, and I've been at it for a couple of years now, is there's a difference between what a office does and what the executive of said office does.
Yes.
Because like I had Sherry Witt on, she's a county clerk. She doesn't sell license plates.
Yes.
She administers the people who sell the license plates.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the things, because I talked to her at length, and her specifically felt to be like it was a justification of her existence because she doesn't do the thing. And it's like, well, no, the administration's important, but when I'm trying to make a decision on who to hire as a voter, I want to know what the job is first. And so if you're administering the staff of 40 or so people, and you need to have some expertise in XYZ because this is what the office works on at large. And so that's one of the things we can start there if you want to help me understand the trustee's office a little better. And then we can start about how you feel about how you're qualified for it.
Well, the county commission passes a budget, right? Mm-hmm. And this year it's about $800 million, more or less. So the trustee's office takes in the property taxes, as you said, gets the sales tax from the state and any fees that come into county offices and puts them in the bank. And as the different branches of the county need their money, you distribute it to them.
Okay.
So it's really the county banker.
Okay, so it's part of it would be ledger as far as, Parks asks for X, and it's designated in the budget as so, and we release X funds to.
Yes.
Okay. Because again, these are the things. I don't know these things, and I don't think most people know these things. And I think that's part of the problem when we're trying to make decisions on these things, because it's easy to get swept up in other topics that are fun and exciting to talk about. But it's like, well, that's not part of the job. So, you talked about the grant writing part and why, and where does that come into trustee as far as the grant writing experience goes?
Well, that was handling $30 million of federal and state money. Those people were looking over my shoulder to make sure that Pellissippi State spent that money as it was intended, without any waste that might go toward doing something that wasn't in the grant.
Right.
Because
grants generally are very specific about what you're allowed to spend their money on.
Well, a friend of mine used to say it's like building castles in the air, but you always leave out the bathrooms. So, things change as you go along with the grant because you see what works and what doesn't, but you check with the federal government to make sure that they're good with whatever direction you're going before you do it.
Okay.
And, at the trustee's office, Ed Schaus has been in there 8 years now, and he's done a pretty good job. Because before that, you may remember that the last two Republican trustees were not so honest. That Jimmy Duncan, for instance, had shadow employees that he was paying and then taking that money. And my opponent, Justin Biggs, was there during that time. In an interview with WBIR, he said, well, I learned what not to do. Well, did he not know it was bad to set up phony employees and pay them before that? I think that the way I've conducted my life with going after the cult and standing up to county government, not hiring friends or relatives makes me the best guy for the office. I know how to handle money. I know how to manage people, and I'm honest.
Okay. Again, okay. I mean, this is a race I struggle with. Like, I 100%. I'm not questioning anything you're trying to say right now. I just don't know. I don't know what the next question needs to be here. I don't know where else to explore and try to and how to understand more. So, if you've got more you want to talk about the office and your plans for the office, because I guess I'll ask it. I'll ask a question this way, and then we'll explore some more. Randomly. So, like, that investment of funds, of the unused funds, being probably the most discretionary part of the job title, and
that's the most important issue to me right now.
Okay, so let's go a little further into that. And so, as far as like, what are some things that you've seen done that have been good, maybe by Schaus currently, or back in the Duncan era when they weren't so great, or maybe even Duncan did some good things that you liked or didn't like or whatever. Because I don't think I quite understand like where, because like one of the things to me, as I'm understanding, especially when I've been talking to the school board side of how that whole team's budget works, is that generally speaking, so we're in end of June right now. So the May collection just went in the beginning of this week for state sales tax, and that will get distributed back to the locals and the subsets of them in mid-July. Mm-hmm. And so part of it's a shell game. You're always a month or two behind.
Right.
You know what's coming. You know how much money's coming in, but you're always a month or two behind before you actually get access to it. And I absolutely can understand the cash handling of trying to make sure you don't overspend now, even though you know it's coming.
Right.
Or is that part of the plan? Is that you put is that part of the thing that the trustee's office would do, is to put like not a rainy day fund per se, but like a cash advance account over here, so that when a department needs something before the July money hits or something like that, you can pull.
Well, you can't go over whatever the county commission set a department's budget at any time without the county commission approving a change in that budget.
Right. But just for the timing's sake, I guess what I was trying to figure out.
I met with Ed Schaus about
I called him.
ago.
I wanted him to do a show just to explain the office to me, and so I haven't got.
So
he's busy, I guess.
He told me that on any day there's about $200 million of Knox County money sitting in banks locally, and it's earning 0.65% interest, less than 1%, and that's fine.
Well,
that was fine.
I would like
past.
to have a better return than that on any of my investments too, but
right now,
savings right now sucks.
Right now, the federal government is paying 3.3% interest on federal bonds. So the difference there is 3% interest.
Right,
$200 million over a year is $5.3 million that we're not getting.
Right.
And over 4 years, it's $20 million. That could go to county projects. It could go to education. It could go to whatever the county commission wanted to put it on, roads, pay increases, but we're not getting it. And on the WBIR interview, Mr. Biggs said he was fine with that. He wanted to stay with the 0.65. I don't understand that.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Fed, so I'm not opposed to not going into the Fed, but I acknowledge that there are certainly other options than a 0.65% return on stuff. Because and I'm trying to think back, because it's been a hot minute since I had Biggs on as a commissioner, and I can't remember if it was him. It was one of the commissioners I was talking to about it when we were talking about some of the COVID funds that was moving around, and whether or not, when the county received those, whether we could shove that somewhere and then work off interest instead of actually using the loan itself because of the grant rules and stuff like that. And I thought that was an interesting take. And again, I don't remember if that was Biggs or not, because it's been a year or so ago. But I do think that's an interesting, the way to use, or the way to maximize saved money is an interesting option for county income that I don't think a lot of people consider as a thing we can do if we could figure out how to function the budget without and keeping said savings. Because at the same time, it's like, well, what'd you say, $200 million?
I said that Schaus said there was $200 million sitting idle in banks.
But see, that's what's weird to me is then why are we turning around and borrowing? We're going to issue bonds for this stadium project when we have the cash on hand. Like, where's the value in that lending process?
Well, it's not. The money is committed to the county budget. It's just that the county departments haven't asked for it yet.
Okay. I see what you're saying. All right, so it's not.
Yeah, it can't be used, but it could be put in like in portions to 1-year federal bonds, which are the safest investment you can make, so that it's staggered, and you still have enough money to fund the departments, but you're getting a higher interest
rate. Right, you're pulling
rate.
Last year's money out today because you got it in cycle. Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. These are fun games. This is stuff that I'm interested in personally, so I get it. But I get it. I don't know. I would wager that if we went and knocked on the doors and wandered around my neighborhood here and talked to my neighbors, they'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's right.
And it's like, well, we're electing people to this office. It matters. I mean, it truly matters that we have some idea what we're doing or what we're asking you to do in order for us to make a decision on who we think's best to do it.
Well, let me talk about Democrats and Republicans. This office does not make policy.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat because you're not going to have an effect on local politics or state politics. Your job is just to take care of the money.
Right. Because, that's one of my assumptions with it, too, and this is another one of those things I'm trying to figure out in my job description sheet is I feel like this office, I feel like the clerk's office as well is one of those that is a very narrow, well-defined job from the state. It's not a county rule. It's not a county charter or commission gets to change things around. This is stuff coming out of the state house and the governor's office that's saying this is the trustees' window. Right. This is what they're allowed to do. And again, as I've understood it so far, the only real discretionary thing is you hire and fire at will. Hopefully they're real people. That would make a difference for the most part, is that you're hiring actual existing human beings.
One would hope so.
Right. I would think that would be the standard rule when you hire. It's got to be a live human being.
Yes.
But the really only functional, discretional thing that you could do is the way we're moving the money. Is there anything else I'm missing as far as the bulk of the job? I mean, obviously it's a lot of accounting, a lot of bookkeeping, you know, and that's what 40 staffers are doing. They're writing down in ledgers and using their QuickBooks or whatever software the county has.
Well, as you said, it's really an administrative job, that there are people in the office who are expert on taking care of the money, on the register and all of that stuff. In fact, Mr. Schaus told me that the office runs itself. So it's just a matter of having the right employees, good employees, and managing the money to get the most benefit for the citizens, for the taxpayers.
Right. Right. So I get it. Okay. I get it. This is an easier one than I thought, because again, that's one of the questions I have a lot about the job. A lot about these kind of jobs in election cycles is how much real discretion is there in the office. Like how much functional difference can a person A or B make in this job, especially depending on the definition from the state and whether the comptroller's office and or the Secretary of State. I'm sure that there is. I would assume that there is some specific oversight from the state that goes on in this office. Especially post things like have happened in the past, and as at least theoretically things are getting a little bit more on the up and up, but I still think there's a big mess. But okay, so then how does that work? This is I guess this to me is where the partisanship actually does apply when you're as a vocal Democrat that you are in a well-defined office that the Secretary of State, who is an elected Republican. We'll see what happens. He has this whole DUI thing going on, but how much do you think that would be an effect on how on the way you're treated from the state level, being of the partisanship problems?
I have no idea what the Secretary of State might do, but he has obligations to treat Knox County like every other county, according to the law. So I wouldn't expect to have any retribution on the office. I don't see how he could.
I guess the question would be: is there, with that small window of discretion that you would have in the office, would there be an ability to try to argue that you're misusing funds? I don't know. That's the only thing that could make sense to me. If you're going to play the party,
I was sued for $3 million for nothing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, but I'm going to fight it.
But you're in Knox County, and we have this weird elected law director office thing, and you're going to have to deal with them as your lawyers.
Yes.
And that's going to be a Republican too, probably.
The most important thing would be to make sure that the books have been audited and are correct.
Right.
And then you have no problem. Now they may make problems, but
right.
I can't be responsible for what other people do.
Right.
I wanted to say, I mentioned that Biggs has been there for 14 years. He has an office in the basement, away from the trustee's office, and he's supervises 2 people after 14 years. That's not much of a
he's busy with his
advertising for.
I don't know the history of that, so I don't know I don't know how to talk about that.
Yeah, I believe he was fired once and then rehired, but I don't remember. I don't know at what point that happened.
You got fired once.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't imagine working for the county as a paid employee and having to deal with scheduled management changes regularly. Just the idea of being somebody in the trustee's office right now going, well, who am I going to work for in September, I guess, when the seat gets officially turned over or whatever. I could see that being it's been a good job. I don't know what it's going to be now.
Well, I don't have any plans to change anything about people that are employed. Mr. Schaus told me that they do a great job, and I believe that they do. So there'd be no reason for me to change to put Democrats in for Republicans. If they're doing a good job, they're going to stay in the office.
Right. Okay. So it's a 4-year term.
Yes.
2-term limit.
Yes.
Or is it the 2 consecutive term limit, or is it a?
I don't know whether
all time.
I don't know the answer to that. But in any case, at my age, I'm just going to do this one time. I'm not going to run.
I'm doing the math in my head on how old I'll be when I get to run in the 26 election, because it sounds like a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah.
I mean, I could do it. I know how to count. That's always been my joke with math. If you put a dollar sign in front of it, I can do the math. When we got letters and other weird stuff, that's when I get lost in my mathematics courses.
The way that the mayor might affect the office is trying to get the trustee to hire his friends or something.
Right.
Of course, I would be opposed to doing anything like that.
I mean, if they're good people and you need a job filled and they can fill the hole, that's fine.
If they're the best candidate,
right,
on a very level playing field, then that would be fine. But if they're just being hired to give them a job, that would not be something that I would do.
I understand that. That makes sense to me. That seems a little bit wasteful, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's what we've seen, and before Mr. Schaus, that's what we were seeing.
Well, I mean, this is one of the other kind of issues for me, and I just don't I say I can understand math when it has dollar signs in front of it. When I get into budgets for countywide budget, county, which is a fairly small budget comparatively, as you see the different governmental body budgets, at least, there's a lot going on, and it's hard to keep up. And so I don't. Again, it's this is one of those things where. For me, one of the goals, I think we've done a good job of getting a better understanding of what the trustee does, not just the office, but what the actual trustee does, is I want to know whose fault it is every time, whatever the thing is. I want to figure out those kind of things, and so what's running through my head currently is I'm trying to figure out, well, are there some of these that will be budget issues that the trustee pushes the funds out because it's in the budget? Or is it the trustee's fault because the trustee's putting money? I'm trying to figure out how I would trace down whether it's a budgetary problem or not. Because this is one of the things that I get lost in the bureaucracy of. There's layers to it, and there's good reason for it, I suppose. But that's where my head's stuck currently in trying to figure out.
So the trustee would have to make sure that the money was available when the department needed it. But again, one of the things that confuses me is that we're talking about the sales tax rollover, the way you take a May sales tax, collects in June, you get it in July or August. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things I'm concerned with looking forward here, which again I understand this isn't necessarily inside the trustee's office because you can't really do anything about it, but I can't help but see some form of recession coming down the barrel. Yeah. And with the sales tax state the way we are, how does the trustee's office handle that when the budget says in October we're releasing X, Y, and Z to these different departments, but
back in August, September, this recession hits hard and we have a significant dip in sales tax. Like how do we manage those kinds of situations? Because at some point, I suppose the commission's going to have to step in and adjust budget.
Well, that's the only way the budget could be changed, is if the county commission decides to change it. But over the past year, we've seen inflation and kind of business going down a little bit, yet the state has $1 billion surplus. More taxes came in than they expected.
Right. Some of that's leftovers from where they spent, what was it, the 20? They had a special session in 20 where they adjusted the budget down because they were concerned about the pandemic drop, and then they underwrote the 21 budget for the same reason. And I mean, hell, for all accounts, forget the pandemic, it's some of the best sales years the state of Tennessee's ever had.
Do you know that Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, has $700 million in federal money that's designated for poor people and children, and they are not spending it at all? It's been there for 2-3 years.
Right.
What is that about?
I've read it a little bit about some of that stuff. I don't know the specific one that Tennessee's in, but I know there's a number of states that have been reluctant to use it. With and my understanding of it, at least, is that there's concerns over adjusted strings. Basically, is that they're concerned that as they start using it, then the rules change on when and where it's allowed. And I don't know. I get that for the broader picture. If we're going to start talking broader picture stuff, I think we as a nation are so upside down in the priorities of government, in that. We could go knock on doors, go down the street, and I could get plenty of people who know who Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and Kristen Sinema and some of those people are, but don't know who their county commissioner is. Don't know who. If I'm in the county, but so my neighbors are all county people. Don't know who. I mean, the mayor's a little bit easier just because he's kind of a celebrity in his own right without the job. But there's a number of offices that do a lot of things that I didn't know until I started doing the show and started diving into this real deep myself. And like that same idea that we understand what's going on federally, to me, puts a dependency on what's going on federally, where we get these weird federal funds things because they're the ones that, I don't know, to me, the federal government, people running for federal office tend to have a more immediate need for campaigning all the time because
I understand they spend several hours a day trying to raise money.
But they're the ones that are going to get more people out voting in their elections because of the way we pay attention as citizenry.
And that's going to be interesting this year because our election is on August the 3rd, but the federal election is not until November.
Right. That's one of those things I didn't know until I started digging into this that I didn't realize. I think I hope it was an intentional move by somebody smart enough years in the past that they lined up that federal state primary on the county general to help get people out. But, again, I mean, you go back and look at the primary results for these county races, they're pretty low numbers.
I think it's just the opposite. Because it's at a different time, we're going to see a very low turnout.
Right. I think you're right. But I don't think a lot of people know that as the fact. I think a lot of people go, oh, it's primary day. I can wait until November. That's the election.
Right.
It's like, well, yes and no. I mean, some of it's primary, but there's, especially this year with all these judge and DA and all those seats on it, it's a crazy year for an election. Like, I mean, like I am not, there's no way I'm going to get everybody. It's just not doable with my schedule. Like, I have a day job and I kind of.
Well, you're making a good effort.
I'm trying to, yeah, and I'm trying to and I'm being selfish in it. I'm making sure I cover my seat 4 races and commission. Or we only have school board this year, but District 18 and state races and stuff like that because that's mine. I get a year off because Becky Massey's got another 2 years before her next one because District 6 is on the off cycle for this, or they're on the presidential cycle at least, and so. But it is a lot, and it is a lot of important stuff because, like, again, like for me, like I said, like, and this is, I guess we'll finally go into me spatting on Facebook with you. One of the things to me, and I don't do it to you, I do it to everybody I see doing it. I appreciate that you're a human being, you're an American citizen, you have a right to say whatever you want.
Yes.
But for me, I hate platforming. I hate this conversation about platforming and whether you should or shouldn't platform people for this, that, and the other. I hate the idea that I don't like that. I'm more than happy to hear your opinion, but when you're using the platform of a trustees race to talk about non-trustee things, that's where I get frustrated. Because, again, we don't know what the job is anyway. And so, like, the idea that somebody agrees with you on grander philosophical political issues, that's fine and good, but that's not trustee stuff.
Now,
and like, as I mean, I laid in, and not that he pays attention to it, but I laid into Mayor Jacobs he had this video over the weekend about, Democrat Biden's gas price BS and school board stuff. It's like, hey, you're the mayor. How about you talk about mayor stuff and leave school board out, so we can vote for our school board people like we want to. School board is not your problem anyway, because you're the mayor of Knox County, and the mayor of Knox County has this much to do with what's going on in the schools. And that's because that's where it started for me, is school stuff. Everybody talks about school stuff. Mm-hmm. And the more I figured out, school board has very little to do with school stuff. The people that really matter in schools are your state house and your state senate seats. That's it. And so when a mayor or a trustee or whomever starts talking about the importance of schools, yes, that's a great thought. Yes. But whether it's intentional or not, it comes across as a vote for me because I care about schools, which is really an implied, I'm going to help do something because you agree that there's a problem in schools. That bothers me. Like, that's something that I push back on with everybody all the time, just you.
If I were a politician and if I had consultants working with me, they would say, don't do that.
I disagree. I think they would tell you to do it.
No,
I think that's
would,
thing.
Because it opens you up to people who are opposed to those ideas.
I mean, yes, in the sense that this is Knox County and stuff like that. But again, for the Knox Dems at large, their whole platform position is really, look how bad what you see is, and so they're doing the same. I mean, they do the same thing. I've yelled at Matt Shears personally. Right. I've yelled at their Facebook page. It's like, when they start laying into Mayor Jacobs about problems in the schools, it's like, Mayor Jacobs didn't do that. He had nothing to do with whatever this school thing is you're talking about. That's not fair, and you're putting the thought in people's brain to vote for Debbie because she's going to do better about this school issue than Mayor Jacobs is, and that's a lie, and it drives me crazy.
Well, if she had $5 million more a year, she might be able to do something about the schools, to help the schools.
Okay, maybe, but again, even in that, as I understand it, it is up to the school board and the school administration office to set the budget. They don't get to.
Well, they have to negotiate with the county. I mean, the county has to approve it. At least
historically, it's they present it, and the county approves it. It's not really a negotiation as much as
I think it is. It may not be out in the public, but I'm sure they're talking about it and what county feels it can afford. It's
got to be in the public if they're playing sunshine rules.
Yeah. In my experience as a newspaper person, counties flaunt the open records.
I mean, I have mixed feelings on the idea of it in and of itself. I think I could see a value into a group of people who get to make a decision, being able to spend an amount of time without the public breathing over their shoulders to discuss something so that they can actually get a direct discussion like we're having now. It's like imagine if we're trying to have a conversation about a policy issue right here, right now, and there's 100 people in the room and interrupting and doing all that kind of stuff. It's hard to get a good line back and forth. But at the same time, it would, the idea behind it is that me and you aren't shaking hands and making a deal, and you're hiring my invisible cousin and paying me for his work.
I don't know if you read about it, but 2 of the sheriff's department employees were criticized roundly by the state for not complying with the Open Records Act. A young lady wanted some information from them, and they failed to do it.
Yeah.
Failed to provide it.
I mean, I find it problematic. I've put some records requests in at the sheriff's office that I'm obligated to. I'm obligated to give out personal information about me to prove that I'm a county resident and kind of stuff like that. I think that's kind of weird. Like, it's like, well, what does it matter if I'm a Roane County resident? I'm interested in this story.
Right.
I want to know. I want to understand the story better. What does it matter if I'm a resident or not? And so, like the last time I did, I can't remember. I think it was murder rates I was looking into or something like that, and they wouldn't give it to me without. They're like, "Hey, we need this information from you before we can release that to you."
You know, they call the media the fifth estate, and their responsibility is to let you know what the county commission is doing,
right?
Which
we fail at miserably too. And again, that's the whole reason I exist, is because I can't find it anywhere else. Yeah. Like, I really like the Compass guys. I actually am producing their podcast for them, and I have a great time working with them, and I've learned so much just being in the room with them. Yeah. But I don't get Sunday mornings my sleep in. And this is Knox County, so a lot of people at church.
Yeah.
How many people are watching the Sunday? Like, and even those, like, they're not even that good either. Like, they're small and short. That's one of the reasons I go as long as I do. And I'd like to do a few debate style ones where I have both people in a race or something like that. But for the most part, I don't want to have to deal with trying to keep you from yelling at Biggs and Biggs from yelling at you. I want to talk to you, then I want to talk to Biggs, and then maybe down the road or something like that. But like, it's not, and especially everybody zooming in all the time. It's just, ugh. It's not informative. And, and again, like you said, like the media is supposed to be the ones that are available to help me understand all these different questions that I have, and they're not. And it's just, that's not what they do anymore. I mean, I hate local media. It's so like you watch 6 o'clock news.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 7 minutes in total that's local, 6 of that is sports and UT activities. So you get 1 minute of some local stories, and they're very light and very top level. You don't get any real insight to anything.
I grieve what's happened to newspapers, especially in small communities. They were the source of information on what the county was doing, and now they can't do it because they can't afford to hire employees. Yeah,
my father-in-law was in Roane County and Hamlin County for a while, and like he left Roane County when they got bought by some whatever. And basically went down to however many people to like 2, and then same thing. And when he went up, I think it was Newport's newspaper, not Hamlin County at large, but he was working in Newport, and then they did the same thing a couple years later. And I mean, I don't know, the News Sentinel it's the USA Today,
right?
With like a local section, and even the local section half the time is national news anyway.
Well, they're claiming that they're going to have more local news, but I don't think putting sports on the front page is more local news.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like my sports. Look around the room. I got my stuff hacked up on the wall.
Me too.
I mean, it's like
me too.
And it's one of those really interesting things that like, it's one of the proofs that people are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. The general public is, because again, we could walk down the street and knock on some doors. I bet you we could find a couple of neighbors that could tell you in depth the complexities of some weird offensive pattern that UT does every year or something like that. Like super complex, in-depth stuff. But they couldn't tell you who you are or what seat you're running for or anything like that. And that's
what's important to them.
Right. And it's not that it shouldn't be or shouldn't be allowed to be, but at the same time it's like, these are elected offices. When's your election date?
Right.
When is your election date? Who are you voting for? Why are you voting for that person? Because what frustrates me more than anything, because I'm a party hater at large. I don't like either of the major parties. I hate the idea that people just vote the RRD. It's lazy and it's imprecise. And anymore, I don't know what the RRD stands for anyway. When
I was out in Kansas, I was a Republican because my senators were Bob Dole and. Oh gosh, can't remember the lady's name, but she was a fine person, and both of them were. When I came back to Sweetwater after being out there in Kansas, I was Bob Dole's county chairman in Monroe County. But the Republican Party has just moved so far to the right that I can't support them anymore. They blame President Biden for increased gas prices when it's obvious that cutting off Russia's oil supply is going to cause the world's gas price to go up. And that's what's happening. Not in the United States alone. It's happening worldwide.
I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. But yes, I agree that it is a shallow argument at best to lay anything that's going on right now.
OPEC is another big cause of it because they haven't increase production. Right. They want to keep the prices high. Right. But, President Biden can't make OPEC do anything.
Right, and sure, let's go be nice to the Saudis because they're not killing half of Yemen right now or anything.
And that's controversial, whether you should go over there and meet with that guy or not.
Right.
Since he murdered a reporter.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole Yemenis crisis is one of those things that does not get any coverage at all. Yeah. And comparatively to everything that's going on in Ukraine right now, it's like, well, this is another ally kind of thing of ours that we've funded. We're basically their Air Force. We've been their Air Force for a decade. And they're just, not full on official genocide, but they're pretty damn close. We don't talk about that one.
My children, 2 of my sons, spent 30 years in the Air Force. My oldest son had 3 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Afghanistan, won 2 Bronze Stars because he was a explosive ordnance disposal guy. That was disarming those roadside bombs.
Right. He was the Hurt Locker dude.
Yep. Well, he used to say, if that Hurt Locker guy was in my unit, he'd be out of it after the first day, because that's not how we do things. And my youngest son spent 6 tours in Afghanistan, which really hurt him. He developed Crohn's disease thanks to the Air Force and the Veterans Administration. He became addicted to oxycodone, and then at some point during the Trump administration, they stopped issuing hydrocodone prescriptions to service people, to veterans. And unfortunately, my son went out and found some on his own, and it turned out to have fentanyl in it, and he killed himself accidentally.
Yeah.
And so altogether, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 sons, we have 60 years of military service. So we're a service family. We believe in the United States. We put our lives on the line for the United States.
Yeah, it's a, I don't know, like, I complain about how complicated and stuff local government trying to figure out what's going on here is. Geopolitics at large it's a whole other animal, and and for me personally, I've become more of an isolationist for it. Like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of your sons and how many of people that I know personally that have gone over and for one reason or another, for one more action or another, and come back and spend the rest of their lives in pain and misery and no real way out and no appropriate help.
Those volunteers. I have so much. I mean, it's a volunteer army. These people volunteered to go.
Right.
And it was like playing Russian roulette. You'd be over there for 7 months, you'd be home for 7 months, and then you're going back and have to take another, pull the trigger one more time to see if you're going to live through it.
Yeah, the older I get and the more I pay attention to it, the more I don't understand our, at least specifically military foreign policy. I don't understand what we're doing, other than the good excuse to spend money with a proper donor.
We, as a people, we want to help people. We see ourselves as good people who do the right thing, and that's why we get involved in that kind of stuff. Trying to bring democracy and freedom and to help the women in the Middle East to have some rights. That's why we do it, but it just hasn't worked out.
Well, I mean, right, and at what cost? At what point?
Yes.
When do we get the ledger out and start putting the debits and credit columns together and see how much it's costing us to fail again?
I certainly feel like my son's life was not worth what we got out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, and that's a horribly tragic way to put it, but I think it's sadly accurate, and it's frustrating.
And as far as me, as I told you, as far as me putting those kind of things on my trustee website, I just want people to know who I am, and just sticking to dollars and cents is not going to tell them.
I agree. I get it. I get it. It's not, and the actual job that goes on in the trustee's office is not very sexy or exciting, and people aren't going to really pay that much attention. But like I said, it's to me, we already have such a poorly educated electorate that to add anything to the mix that isn't on point is going to continue to confuse the poorly educated area, because it's not that they're not smart enough. We've already talked about that part. They're smart enough to figure it out. It's just that they don't want to take the time and they don't want to take the energy, so they're going to take the headline. It takes
everything they have just to keep a roof over their head and food on the table.
Absolutely.
And they don't have time to mess with politics.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's because of my genius or whatever, but I got lucky. I got lucky in a couple of different things in my life to get me to where I am, where I have the time to do this. Yeah. If it was 5 years ago and where I was professionally and stuff back then, I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time to do this show. I don't have time to do the other show that we do. I don't have time to dig in and try harder. Yeah. To pay better attention. And I'm desperate. It shouldn't be me, but I'm desperate for a way that it's more digestible to people to understand and take a little bit of time. That's not, mind-numbingly specific, and understand a little bit more what's happening.
Money's, of course, the thing that helps you get elected, and my opponent has like 6 times more money in the bank than I have.
Right.
So I'm at a disadvantage there. Can I mention my website in case?
Yeah, we'll
anybody
get to that.
wanted
We'll get to that here.
donate
In a second. So all my interview shows that I'm doing for campaigns, I have a 5 standard question set, and then we'll do a plug set.
Okay.
And then we'll do the outro. So all right. So 5 standard questions. Question number 1. I think we've already answered it, but we're going to do it in short form. Is this your first time running for office?
Yes.
1B is you've already answered this one too. Will this be the last time you run for office?
Yes.
Okay. Question 2, what's your favorite place to eat around here?
Say it again?
What's your favorite place to eat around here?
Oh, let me see. I like Aubrey's.
Okay. 3 is what's your favorite ice cream?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate chip. So mint chocolate chip or just chocolate chip?
Just chocolate chip.
Okay.
It's hard to find. It's like nobody makes
it's a
it
rare
anymore.
one anymore. Yeah, it's mint chocolate chip or cookie dough.
So when I see it, I buy it.
Fair enough. I like cookie dough personally, so I'm good with it's popular still, so I can get mine. All right, so number 4 is a more actual question. Number 4 is for me as a voter, do you feel like there is value in a partisanship or for the partisanship in this race? Do you feel like the R and the D will help me make a decision on who's better for the job?
It should be based on the person in this case. Again, because it's not about policy. The trustee has no effect on whether how much money is collected. We don't have anything to do with tax raising or lowering. We don't have anything to do with gas prices. We are just taking care of the taxpayers' money and making sure it's spent as the budget says. So it should be whether Cazalet or Biggs is the best and most reliable person.
Okay. All right. So number 5 is going to be, since you are running as a Democrat, I always ask, what's your favorite opposing party person? So who's your favorite Republican, which I think you already answered.
Well, he's dead now.
All right. Well, then fine. Give me a live one. Give me a live Republican that's currently going around, like maybe local, maybe state, whatever, that you feel like's doing good work, has good efforts, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have to think about that a little bit. Nothing comes to mind right off the bat.
That's like, and again, like when we set up this 5 standard questions, it was before I really understood the office because it doesn't really matter. Just like you said for number 4, it shouldn't matter. So what does it matter? Like, I mean, you theoretically, it doesn't matter if you hate all Republicans.
I thought of somebody.
It doesn't change the job. Okay, go ahead.
Cheney. She's standing up for what she believes in, and even though it may cost her the election, she's willing to do that for the benefit of the country. Even though I disagree with her on many policy issues, I admire her for her courage.
Okay. All right. So I had an additional one that's not part of the standard 5 that I thought of while we were talking just now is Schaus does his, what is it, weekly or monthly kind of update?
Actually, he stopped doing that about January, and I don't know why. And I would want the trustee's office to be the most transparent office in the county.
Okay. Would that be something you'd want to do?
Yes.
Bring it back in? Okay. All right, so that's that. So give me the plugs, website, Facebook page. If you go follow him on Facebook, because then when you follow him on Facebook, you'll get to hear me pitching fits at him about things he's talking about that's unimportant.
Yeah, you'd want to see that argument.
Right. You need. I mean, technically, if you follow the Almost in Your Unit page, you see me comment on him anyway.
So it's www.caz4trustee.com.
Number 4 or spelled out?
Spelled out.
FOR?
Uh-huh.
I'm putting it in because I'm going to add it to the show notes and stuff.
That's
later.
my web page, and it's also how you find the Facebook page and the Twitter.
All right, cool. All right, so that's that. All right, plugs, anything? All right, so that's all I got. Is there anything else you want to do before we call it a show?
I wanted to tell you, in the primary, there was a guy named Richard Jacobs running against Mr. Biggs. Mm-hmm. He'd been in Knox County for 4 years, coming back from overseas after a long time, and he got 12,000 votes compared to Mr. Biggs' 15,000 votes. Well, that surprised me. There were a lot of people who didn't vote for Biggs, mm-hmm. and I hope that some of those people will consider coming over and voting for me.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I absolutely 100% believe that there was a lot of crossover vote in that primary. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that a good chunk of that 12,000 was crossover vote, which, if that's crossover vote, they're D people voting in our primary, which if they're D people, they'll probably vote for you anyway. I mean, that would be my assumption.
Well, I hope some of the moderate Republicans will give me a look.
I mean, I get it. Like I don't like the parties. I think they're a net negative for the public personally, and so don't vote by letter, vote by person. That would be my thing. So, all right, I got an outro, and we're going to call the show. All right, Kaz is good. He's really good because he sucked me down rabbit holes into things that are not office. But we learned what a trustee is and what a trustee does. So that was the important one for me. We got to know Mr. Kaz a little bit, and I'll get Biggs in here shortly, and we'll have his side of the story and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we're Almost in Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to our website, almostinagreement.com. You can see Election Guide 22. There'll be a link next to Kaz's name with this show as well as his website. And then I'll have a Biggs version opposite as well as all the other races that are going on. Election Commission website and KGIS are on there. You can figure out what district you're in, what your polling location is, whether you're registered or not. If you're not registered, you can go ahead and do that. And then, figure out who you're going to vote for. And, like I say all the time, we need to be smarter voters. So don't be dumb. Learn your stuff. So anyway, we're almost in agreement. We'll got more stuff coming up for you later.